A boy sits in a classroom, staring out the window while the teacher explains long division for the third time. His leg won't stop bouncing. His eyes chase a bird across the glass, then a passing car, then a crack in the ceiling paint. He has heard maybe one sentence in 20 minutes, and by lunchtime he'll be labeled a problem, medicated, managed. Now take that exact same boy, that exact same restless, scanning, novelty-hungry brain, and drop him onto a grassland 90,000 years ago. Suddenly he isn't broken at all. Suddenly he's the reason the whole tribe eats tonight. We have a story we tell ourselves about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. The story goes like this. It is a modern malfunction, a glitch in the brain's wiring, a defect that showed up alongside sugar, screens, and standardized testing. Something went wrong, and now roughly 1 in 20 children carries a diagnosis for it. That is the myth. It is tidy, it is comforting, and it is almost entirely backwards, because the trait we now call a disorder is one of the oldest, most carefully preserved pieces of equipment your species has ever carried. Start with the biology, because the biology is where the myth first falls apart. Much of what we call ADHD traces back to how the brain handles a single chemical, dopamine. Dopamine is not the pleasure chemical people think it is. It is the anticipation chemical, the molecule of wanting, seeking, and chasing the next thing. In brains associated with ADHD, dopamine signaling runs differently. The reward system is quieter at rest and hungrier for novelty. Routine feels unbearable. A new stimulus, a new place, a new possibility feels electric. And there is a specific gene that keeps showing up in this story. It's called DRD4, and one particular version of it, the 7-repeat variant, is strongly linked to novelty-seeking, impulsivity, and restlessness. Here's the part that should stop you cold. That variant is not some recent mutation. Geneticists estimate it spread through human populations somewhere between 40 and 50,000 years ago, right around the time our ancestors began their great expansion out of Africa and across the entire planet. And it did not spread quietly. It spread aggressively, favored by natural selection, carried farthest and held longest by the very populations that migrated the greatest distances. The genes remember the journey even when the textbooks forget it. Think about what that means for a second. The genetic signature of restlessness is concentrated in the descendants of the people who kept moving, who left the known valley for the unknown one, who could not sit still while there was a horizon they hadn't crossed. A calm, focused, routine-loving brain is wonderful for staying. It is useless for leaving. Someone had to be pulled forward by curiosity they couldn't switch off. Someone had to find the strange new thing over the ridge irresistible instead of frightening. That someone carried the trait we now try to medicate out of children. But migration is a story, and stories aren't proof. So here's the proof. In the early 2000s, an anthropologist named Dan Eisenberg studied the Arial, a group of people in northern Kenya. Part of the group had stayed nomadic, following their cattle across the land. Another part had recently settled into farming villages. Same population, same genes, split into 2 lives. Eisenberg tested them for the 7-repeat variant, the ADHD-linked gene, and the results were extraordinary. Among the still nomadic men, carrying that variant was associated with being better nourished, physically stronger, better fed. Among the settled men, the exact same gene was associated with the opposite. Read that again. 1 gene, 2 environments. In the mobile, unpredictable, always scanning world, the trait made bodies thrive. In the sit-still, repeat the same task everyday world, the identical trait dragged them down. The gene didn't change. The world around it did. This is the single most important idea in the entire conversation, and almost nobody says it out loud. ADHD is not a defect inside a person. It is a mismatch between an ancient design and a modern room. The classroom didn't reveal a disorder. The classroom created the conditions under which an old strength finally became a weakness. And once you see the mismatch, the ancient advantages line up one after another. Consider foraging. A brain that fixates on one patch of berries until every last one is gone is efficient in the short term and starving by next week. A brain that gets bored, that abandons the depleting patch early and wanders toward the next one, tracks almost perfectly with something ecologists call optimal foraging theory. That so-called distractibility is a sampling strategy. It keeps you moving through the landscape before any single source runs dry. What looks like a failure to focus is actually a refusal to overcommit. Now consider danger. In a settled office, hypervigilance is exhausting and pointless. On an open plain full of predators, a mind that cannot stop scanning, that snaps to every rustle in the grass, every shifting shadow, every flicker of movement at the edge of sight, is not disordered. It is a sentinel. The impulsivity works the same way. When a lion breaks from cover, the person who pauses to weigh their options is already dead. The person who reacts before thinking, who moves on pure instinct, lives to pass on the gene. Slow, deliberate reflection is a luxury of the safe. So put the pieces together. The wandering attention that samples the whole landscape. The novelty hunger that pushes people over unknown ridges. The hypervigilance that catches the predator first. The impulsive reaction that beats the ambush. In the world your ancestors actually lived in, these were not symptoms. They were a toolkit. And the tribe that had a few of these minds among the calm, patient planners was a tribe with a scout, a sentinel, an explorer, and a first responder all built in. The variety was the point. No group survives on one kind of brain. Which brings us back to the boy at the window. His attention isn't missing. It's pointed at everything at once, exactly as it was engineered to be, in a room that punishes the one thing it was built to do. We didn't discover a new disorder. We built a new environment, 4 walls and a clock and a demand to sit perfectly still, and then we called the mismatch a diagnosis. The trait that carried your species out of Africa and across every ocean on Earth is now something we hand a prescription for by the age of 8. None of this means the struggle isn't real. In this world, in these rooms, that struggle is genuine and it matters. But it does mean the story we tell is wrong. That mind was never a broken version of a normal one. It was a normal version of a much older one, still running its ancient code inside a world it was never designed for. If this changed how you see the boy at the window, subscribe, and tell me what you want explained next. This has been The First People.